Every time my driver took me to work, he brought his girlfriend along. Since it was on the way, I never minded. Marcus had been driving me to my office for about 3 years, and honestly, he was more than just an employee. He was someone I trusted, someone I considered a friend. His girlfriend, Sophie, seemed sweet enough. She'd sit in the passenger seat, always polite, always smiling, occasionally making small talk about the weather or asking how my day was going. I run a successful tech consulting firm, and the morning commute was usually when I'd catch up on emails or prepare for meetings, so I appreciated that they kept to themselves most of the time. Marcus was punctual, professional, and discreet. Those qualities were important to me. I valued my privacy, and in my line of work, confidentiality was everything. I'd recommended him to several of my business associates, and he'd started building quite a client list. I was happy for him. He'd mentioned several times how grateful he was for the opportunity, how much the job meant to him, especially since he was saving up to propose to Sophie. I even helped him pick out a ring, though I'd never tell anyone that. It wasn't the kind of thing a boss typically does, but like I said, Marcus was more than just an employee. Everything seemed normal until about 6 months ago. That's when I started noticing small things. Sophie's glances in the rearview mirror lasted a bit too long. The way she'd touch her hair when I got in the car. How she'd suddenly become more interested in my work, asking specific questions about my projects, my clients, my schedule. I'm not a vain man, but I'm not oblivious either. I'm 42, I keep in shape, and I've been told I'm attractive. But I never, not for a single second, considered that Sophie might be interested in me. She was with Marcus, and Marcus was my friend. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March. I remember because I had a crucial presentation for a potential client worth millions. Marcus picked me up at the usual time, but Sophie wasn't in the car. I asked about her, just being polite, and Marcus said she wasn't feeling well. He seemed distracted, not his usual cheerful self. I didn't think much of it. We all have off days. That evening after the presentation, which went phenomenally well, I decided to celebrate with some colleagues at an upscale bar downtown. Around 10 p.m., I went outside to take a call from a client in Tokyo. That's when I saw her, Sophie, but she wasn't alone and she definitely didn't look sick. She was dressed in a tight red dress, heels the works, and she was with a man, not Marcus. They were standing close, intimate, and as I watched, hidden partially by a pillar, he leaned in and kissed her. Not a friendly peck, a deep, passionate kiss that made it very clear this wasn't their first time. My first instinct was to tell Marcus. He deserved to know, but something held me back. Maybe it was the presentation high, maybe it was the whiskey, or maybe it was something darker. I took out my phone and snapped a few photos. Insurance, I told myself. Then I went back inside and tried to enjoy the rest of the evening, but my mind kept drifting back to what I'd seen. The next morning, Marcus picked me up with Sophie in her usual spot. She was all smiles, asking about my presentation, congratulating me on the success she'd somehow heard about. I played along, watching her performance with new eyes. She was good, really good. Marcus had no idea. I could see it in the way he looked at her, touched her hand at red lights, smiled at her jokes. He was completely in love, completely trusting, completely oblivious. I still didn't say anything. I told myself I needed to be sure that maybe I'd misunderstood what I'd seen, so I started paying more attention. I started noticing patterns. Sophie's questions weren't just friendly interest. She was fishing for information, about my schedule, about when I'd be out of town, about my personal life, and I started giving her false information just to test my theory. I told her I'd be in San Francisco the following Thursday for a conference. I wasn't. Instead, I had my assistant cancel my afternoon meetings, and around 2 p.m., I drove myself to the neighborhood where Marcus had mentioned he and Sophie lived. It was a modest area, nothing fancy, but nice enough. I parked down the street from their apartment building and waited. Around 3:30, a familiar car pulled up, the same man from the bar. He went inside, and about 5 minutes later, I saw movement in a third-floor window. Sophie appeared, and then him, and then they were kissing. I took more photos. I sat there for 2 hours, documenting everything. When he finally left, I drove home, my mind racing with questions. Why would Sophie risk her relationship with Marcus? Who was this guy, and why did I feel so angry about it? That last question bothered me the most. I should have felt bad for Marcus, and I did, but there was something else. Something that felt uncomfortably like jealousy. I pushed that thought away. I was just protective of my friend, that's all. But then things got weirder. The next week, I returned home early from an actual business trip to find my house had been broken into. Nothing major was taken. Some cash from my desk, a watch, some electronics. The police said it looked like a typical burglary, but something felt off. My safe hadn't been touched, and some obviously valuable items were still there. What was missing were some documents from my home office. Specifically, documents related to a new project I was developing. A proprietary software system that would revolutionize data security for financial institutions. It was worth potentially hundreds of millions. I didn't mention the missing documents to the police. Instead, I went back through my security footage. My system backs up to the cloud, something the burglars apparently didn't know. And there, clear as day, was the man I'd seen Sophie with. He'd been in my house, in my office, photographing my documents. The cash and electronics were just cover. That's when I realized this wasn't about Sophie cheating on Marcus. This was bigger, much bigger. I started digging into who this man was. I have resources, connections, and I know how to find information. His name was Derek Lansing, and he worked for Quantum Solutions, one of my biggest competitors, the same company that had been aggressively trying to acquire my firm for the past year. The same company I'd refused to even meet with because their CEO, Richard Vance, and I had history. Bad history. 15 years ago, Vance and I were partners. We'd started a company together, fresh out of grad school, full of ideas and ambition. But Vance was impatient, reckless. He wanted to cut corners, steal code, whatever it took to get ahead. I refused. We fought constantly until I finally bought him out and dissolved the partnership. I rebuilt from scratch, created my current company through hard work and legitimate means. Vance went on to form Quantum Solutions, and while they were successful, they had a reputation for aggressive, sometimes questionable business practices. Now it all made sense. Sophie wasn't just cheating on Marcus. She was a plant. But how deep did this go? Did Marcus know? The thought made me sick. Marcus, who I'd trusted, who I'd helped, who I'd considered a friend, was he in on it too? I had to know, so I set a trap. I started talking about a fake project during our morning commutes, a revolutionary AI system, completely fictional, but I described it in detail. I mentioned meeting with investors, development timelines, even dropped names of fake partners. I watched Sophie in the mirror as I talked. She was listening intently, occasionally asking questions that seemed casual but were clearly designed to extract more information. Then I waited. If Sophie was feeding information to Derek and Quantum Solutions, they'd make a move. And they did. 2 weeks later, Quantum Solutions announced at a press conference that they were developing an AI system almost identical to my fake project. They'd taken the bait completely. Vance stood there, smug and confident, describing technology that didn't exist, couldn't exist the way I'd described it. But he didn't know that. Now I had confirmation, but I still didn't know about Marcus. That answer came in the most painful way possible. I installed a small recording device in my car, hidden in the back seat. After I'd get out each morning, I'd let it run for a few minutes. Most days, it was just Marcus and Sophie talking about mundane things. But then one morning, I heard it. "Did you get anything useful today?" Marcus's voice. "He's being careful, not mentioning the real projects as much, Sophie. We need to give Derek something soon. He's getting impatient." "I know, baby, but we can't push too hard or he'll get suspicious. When this is over, when we get the payout from Vance, we're done. No more of this." "I know, I hate lying to him. He's actually a decent guy." "Decent guys don't get to be as rich as him without stepping on people. He's probably done worse than we're doing. At least we're doing this to survive, not for greed." I sat in my office, listening to that recording over and over. Marcus had been playing me from the beginning. Maybe not from the very beginning, but at some point Vance had got to him. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. I'd trusted him. I'd helped him. And all along, he was feeding information to my enemy. I wanted to confront them immediately. Fire Marcus, expose Sophie, maybe even press charges. But a cooler head prevailed. If I tipped my hand now, Vance would just retreat and try a different approach. No, I needed to turn this around. I needed revenge, not just justice. I needed to destroy them the way they'd tried to destroy me. So I kept playing along. I continued my morning routine as if nothing had changed. But now I was feeding them carefully crafted disinformation. False project details, fake meetings, made-up investors, and I started gathering evidence. Every conversation was recorded. Every document Sophie asked about, I tracked. I hired a private investigator to follow Derek, to document his meetings with Sophie, his communications with Vance. But I also started building something real, something that would make Vance's betrayal complete. I reached out to some of my most trusted colleagues, people who had also been burned by Vance over the years, and I proposed a partnership. We would create the very technology I'd been pretending to develop. Not the AI system that was too obvious, but the original project, the data security system. We would pour resources into it, work in complete secrecy, and beat Quantum Solutions to market. Months passed, I played my part perfectly. Marcus and Sophie played theirs. Derek continued to feed information to Vance, and Quantum Solutions continued to make moves based on my fake intel. They hired expensive developers for projects that would lead nowhere. They courted investors for technology that didn't work the way they thought it did. They committed resources and capital to a race they couldn't win because they were running in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, my real project was coming together beautifully. We worked nights, weekends, in a separate facility that Marcus didn't even know existed. My core team, people who had been with me for years, people I actually could trust, were creating something revolutionary, something that would change the industry. But revenge needed more than just business success. I needed to expose them. I needed everyone to know what Vance had done, what Marcus and Sophie had done, and I needed it to hurt. So I started planting seeds. I let slip to Sophie that I was considering selling my company, that I was tired, burnt out, thinking about retirement. I mentioned a price, a ridiculously low price for a company of my size and reputation. I watched her eyes light up in the rearview mirror. This was what Vance had wanted all along. Not just to steal my technology, but to acquire my company, my client list, my reputation, and probably to destroy it all as payback for our failed partnership 15 years ago. The next week, I received a call from Vance's office. He wanted to meet, to discuss a potential acquisition. I pretended to be reluctant, but eventually agreed. We met at a high-end restaurant, the kind where business deals and reputations are made and broken over expensive wine and rare steaks. Vance looked older than I remembered, harder. Success hadn't softened him. If anything, it had sharpened his edges. We exchanged pleasantries, talked about the old days with forced nostalgia, and then got down to business. "I hear you're thinking about selling," he said, swirling his wine. "I'm exploring options," I replied carefully. "I'd like to make you an offer, a generous one." "I'm listening." He named a figure. It was actually fair, maybe even slightly above market value. He must have wanted this badly. I pretended to consider it, asked questions, raised concerns. I was the picture of a tired businessman looking for an exit. "There's just one thing," I said finally. "I'd need complete confidentiality until the deal closes. I don't want my employees worried, my clients jumping ship. Can you agree to that?" "Of course," Vance said, extending his hand. "We'll keep this completely quiet." We shook on it and I felt his grip, firm and confident. He thought he'd won. He thought after 15 years, he was finally getting his revenge, taking everything I'd built. I smiled and finished my wine, already planning the next move. Over the following weeks, we went through the motions of due diligence. Vance's team examined my books, my projects, my assets. I gave them access to everything. Well, almost everything. The real project, the one that would change everything, remained hidden. To them, it looked like I was running a successful but ultimately ordinary tech consulting firm. Good but not great. Profitable but not extraordinary. Worth buying but not worth the premium Vance was paying. I knew what he was planning. He'd acquire my company, strip it for parts, take my clients, gut my team, and shut it down. It was personal for him, not business, and that was his weakness. During all this, I maintained my routine with Marcus and Sophie. They must have felt so clever, helping to orchestrate my downfall while pretending to be loyal. Sophie even had the audacity to tell me she'd miss our morning conversations when I retired. Marcus said I deserved rest, that I'd earned it. The performance was almost convincing. Then came the day I'd been planning for, the day everything would come together. We scheduled the final signing at Vance's office, a big show with lawyers and witnesses. The deal was for $247 million, with the transfer of all assets, intellectual property, and client contracts. Vance had arranged for press to be there, wanting to make a spectacle of his victory. I arrived with my lawyer, Patricia, who was the only person besides my core team who knew the full truth. Vance was already there, practically glowing with satisfaction. His entire executive team was present, and there in the corner, trying to look like just another Quantum Solutions employee, was Derek Lansing. We went through the paperwork, page after page of legal documents. Vance barely read them, too eager to close the deal. His lawyers were more careful, but they found nothing wrong. Everything was exactly as it should be. Finally, we reached the signature page. "Before we sign," I said, "I have a presentation I'd like to share. Just a few slides about the company's future direction, some thoughts on the transition." Vance looked annoyed but nodded. "Make it quick." I pulled out my laptop and connected to their conference room display. The first slide appeared, but it wasn't about company direction. It was a photograph, Sophie and Derek kissing outside a bar, the same photo I'd taken months ago. The room went silent. Vance's smile faltered. "What is this?" "Just documenting some relationships," I said calmly, advancing to the next slide. Sophie and Derek entering her apartment. The next slide. Derek breaking into my house. The next. Derek photographing my documents. Vance's face was turning red. Derek was standing now, looking panicked. I continued. Phone records showing hundreds of calls between Derek and Sophie. Bank records showing payments from Quantum Solutions to Sophie through a shell company. Recordings of Marcus and Sophie discussing their spying. "You bugged your own car," Vance said, his voice tight. I protected myself from corporate espionage, I replied, something you should have been more careful about. I advanced through more slides, emails between Derek and Vance discussing the information they'd stolen, plans to use my technology, strategies to sabotage my business, and then the final section, documents showing how Quantum Solutions had spent the last 8 months developing projects based on false information, how they'd committed resources to technology that didn't work, how their stock price was built partly on announcements about innovations they couldn't deliver. Every piece of information Sophie and Derek stole was fake, I said. Every project you've announced based on that intelligence is built on sand. And when your investors find out, when your board finds out, when the SEC finds out about the corporate espionage, the insider trading, the fraud, Quantum Solutions won't just lose value, it will cease to exist. Vance was standing now, his hands on the table. This is slander. These documents could be fabricated. They could be, I agreed, except I've already shared copies with the FBI, the SEC, and several major news organizations. The story breaks in about, I checked my watch, 3 minutes. Right on cue, Vance's phone started buzzing, then his lawyer's phones, then everyone's phones. The story was out: corporate espionage, fraud, theft. Quantum Solutions stock was already plummeting in after-hours trading. But I wasn't done. I advanced to the final slides. Now, let me tell you what I've really been doing these past 8 months while you were chasing ghosts. The screen filled with technical specifications, patents, partnership agreements. This is Sentinel, a data security platform that uses quantum-resistant encryption and AI-driven threat detection. It's already been tested by 3 major financial institutions. We have contracts worth $1.2 billion. We're announcing publicly tomorrow, and every single patent is in my name. I looked at Vance, whose face had gone from red to pale. You wanted to buy my company. You can't afford it. You can barely afford your legal bills for what's coming. I turned to Derek. You're fired, obviously, and you'll be hearing from the FBI. Then to Marcus, who had been standing in the hallway, having brought me here like he had so many times before. He must have heard everything through the open door. Marcus, I trusted you. I helped you. And you sold me out for what? A payment from Vance. Was it worth it? Marcus couldn't meet my eyes. Sophie had tears running down her face, though I suspected they were more from fear than remorse. I packed up my laptop. The deal is off, obviously. Patricia will be in touch about our lawsuit. We'll be seeking damages for corporate espionage, theft of intellectual property, and emotional distress. I estimate we'll be asking for about $500 million, which, given the evidence, I expect to receive. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Marcus, you're fired too, obviously, but I'll give you one piece of advice. Whatever Vance promised you, whatever payment you were expecting, you won't see a penny of it. Quantum Solutions will be bankrupt within 6 months, so you betrayed a friend for nothing. I hope it was worth it. I left them there in that conference room and walked out into the evening air. My phone was already ringing. Reporters, investors, colleagues. The story was exploding. Quantum Solutions stock had dropped 40% in 20 minutes. Vance's reputation was destroyed. The FBI had already issued a statement about investigating the corporate espionage allegations. I should have felt triumphant. I'd won, completely, utterly, devastatingly. But mostly I just felt tired and sad. Sad about Marcus, about the friendship I'd thought we had. Sad about the time wasted, the trust broken. I went home to my empty house, poured myself a drink, and sat in the dark. Victory tastes sweeter in imagination than in reality. But the story doesn't end there. It never does, not really. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The FBI investigation moved quickly with all the evidence I'd provided. Derek was arrested for breaking and entering, theft, and corporate espionage. Sophie was named as an accomplice. Marcus was brought in for questioning but ultimately not charged, though his reputation was destroyed. No one would hire him after the story came out. Quantum Solutions stock went into freefall. Within a month, they'd lost 70% of their value. Vance was forced out by the board, his shares diluted to nothing in an emergency restructuring. The company eventually filed for bankruptcy, just as I'd predicted. My company, meanwhile, soared. The publicity around Sentinel and the dramatic exposure of Quantum Solutions espionage made us the hottest name in tech security. Within 3 months, we'd signed contracts worth over $3 billion. My company's valuation went from roughly $250 million to over $2 billion. Forbes did a cover story. I was invited to speak at conferences, consulted by government agencies. But success felt hollow. I'd lost something in all this. Maybe it was innocence, or maybe just the ability to trust people easily. I started working from home more, avoiding unnecessary contact. I drove myself everywhere. I kept people at arm's length. Then, about 4 months after everything exploded, I received an unexpected visitor. It was late afternoon, and I was working in my home office when my housekeeper told me someone was at the gate. Marcus. My first instinct was to send him away, but curiosity won out. I had the gate opened and watched from my window as he walked up the long driveway. He looked terrible, thinner, older, defeated. I met him at the door. We stood there for a long moment, not speaking. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he finally said. "I don't even expect you to listen, but I needed to try to explain." I should have closed the door, should have told him to leave, that there was nothing he could say that would matter, but I stepped aside and let him in. We sat in my living room, in the same chairs where we'd talked so many times before, usually about casual things. Sports, weather, his plans to propose to Sophie. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Sophie wasn't my girlfriend," Marcus said. "I mean, she was, but that's not how it started. Vance approached me about 2 years ago. You just landed that big contract with the European banks, remember? He said he wanted information, just competitive intelligence. He offered me $10,000 a month. I said no." He looked at me as if hoping for some recognition of this small nobility. I kept my face neutral. "But then my mother got sick, cancer, stage 4. She needed treatment, expensive treatment that insurance wouldn't fully cover. I went back to Vance. He said the offer was still open, but he wanted more now. He wanted someone on the inside. He'd provide the person. That's when Sophie showed up." "You could have asked me for help," I said quietly. "I would have helped with your mother's treatment." "I know," Marcus said, and his voice cracked. "I know that now. But I was proud, stupid, and Vance made it seem so harmless. Just information about where you were going, who you were meeting with. Nothing that would really hurt you," he said. "And you believed him?" I wanted to believe him. The money was good. Mom's treatment was expensive. And at first, it really did seem harmless. But then they wanted more. Detailed information about projects, clients, proprietary technology. I tried to pull back, but Vance threatened me. He had evidence of what I'd already done. He said he'd send it to you, to the police, that I'd lose everything. "So you went deeper." So I went deeper, and I hated myself every day for it. Every morning, driving you to work, listening to you talk about your day, your plans, treating me like a friend, I hated myself. But I was trapped. "Your mother," I said, "how is she?" Marcus's face crumbled. "She died 3 months ago. The treatment didn't work. So I did all of this, betrayed you, destroyed my life for nothing." We sat in silence. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction at his suffering, wanted to tell him he deserved every bit of pain he was feeling. But I couldn't. I just felt tired. "Why are you here, Marcus?" I asked. "To apologize, to tell you the truth, and to give you this." He pulled an envelope from his jacket and set it on the table between us. "It's everything I have left from what Vance paid me, about $80,000. I know it doesn't come close to making up for what I did, but it's all I have." I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "I don't want your money." "I know, but I need you to take it. I need to give back something, even if it's just this." I pushed the envelope back toward him. "Give it to charity, cancer research maybe, in your mother's name." He stared at me, tears now openly running down his face. "Why are you being kind to me, after everything I did?" "I'm not being kind," I said. "I'm being practical. Your guilt isn't my responsibility. Your redemption isn't my concern. Do something good with the money, or don't, but I don't want to see you again." Marcus nodded, picking up the envelope with shaking hands. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I really did consider you a friend. That part wasn't fake, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." After he left, I sat alone for a long time, thinking about betrayal, revenge, and the price of both. I'd won. I'd destroyed my enemies, built an empire, proven myself right and them wrong. But I felt no joy in it, only a deep, aching loneliness. Weeks passed, the legal proceedings moved forward. My lawsuit against Quantum Solutions, Vance, Derek, and Sophie was settled for $380 million, though realistically I'd probably only collect a fraction of that from the bankruptcy proceedings. Derek was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Sophie got 18 months in probation. Vance faced multiple lawsuits and investigations. His career was over, his reputation destroyed. I should have moved on, should have focused on my success, on building my company, on the future. But I couldn't stop thinking about what Marcus had said, about being trapped, about making terrible choices for understandable reasons, about the price of pride. I started to wonder about my own role in all this. Had I been so focused on success that I'd missed the signs that Marcus was struggling? Should I have created an environment where he felt he could ask for help? Was I partially responsible for what happened? These thoughts bothered me more than I wanted to admit, so I did something I'd never done before. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rachel Chen, a specialist in trauma and trust issues. At first, I told myself it was just to process the betrayal, to move past it, but as our sessions continued, I started to realize there was more to unpack. You say you trusted Marcus, Dr. Chen said during one session, but did you really? Did you open up to him about your struggles, your fears, your vulnerabilities? Or did you maintain a professional distance while expecting him to be personally loyal? The question bothered me because I didn't have a good answer. I'd shared some things with Marcus, but always from a position of strength. I'd helped him, advised him, been generous with him. But had I ever been vulnerable? Had I ever treated him as an equal or just as a valued employee? You describe yourself as betrayed, Dr. Chen continued, and you were. But I wonder if part of your anger comes from having your judgment questioned. You pride yourself on being able to read people, to trust the right people. Marcus's betrayal didn't just hurt you emotionally, it challenged your self-perception. She was right, of course. The betrayal hurt, but the fact that I'd missed it, that I'd been played, that hurt even more. It meant I wasn't as smart as I thought, wasn't as perceptive, wasn't as in control. Control is an illusion, Dr. Chen said when I voiced this thought. You can't control other people's choices, only your own responses. Marcus made terrible choices, but you can choose how to move forward. Moving forward, the concept seemed simple but felt impossible. How do you trust again after being betrayed? How do you open yourself up to friendship when friendship had been weaponized against you? I didn't have answers, but I kept working on it. I started small. I began having lunch with some of my longtime employees, not to discuss business, but just to talk. I joined a gym and made casual conversation with the people there. I adopted a dog, a golden retriever I named Apollo, who demanded walks and attention and gave unconditional love in return. Slowly, very slowly, the edges of my world started to soften. The anger began to fade, replaced by something more complex. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. Marcus had made terrible choices, but they came from a place of desperation, not malice. Sophie had been caught up in something bigger than herself. Even Vance, in his own twisted way, was acting from wounded pride and old grudges. None of this excused what they did, but it made them human rather than monsters, and that, surprisingly, made it easier to move on. 6 months after Marcus's visit, I was walking Apollo in the park when I saw her, Sophie. She was sitting on a bench, wearing a simple dress, no makeup, looking nothing like the polished woman who used to ride in my car. She saw me at the same moment, and I watched her face cycle through emotions: fear, shame, resignation. I could have walked past, should have, probably, but something made me stop. "Hello, Sophie," I said. "Mr. Thornton," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you came to this park. I can leave." "It's a public park," I said. "You have as much right to be here as I do." We stood there awkwardly. Apollo, who loved everyone, went up to her and demanded to be petted. She looked at me for permission, and I nodded. She scratched behind his ears, and he leaned into her hand, tail wagging. "I served my time," Sophie said, still focused on Apollo. "Got out 2 weeks ago, trying to figure out what comes next." "And what does come next?" "I don't know. No one will hire me. Not in tech, not in anything professional. I'm working at a coffee shop, trying to save enough to take some online classes, maybe start over." "What would you study?" She looked up at me, surprised by the question. "I don't know, something helpful, maybe social work or counseling. I've met a lot of people who made bad choices for desperate reasons. Maybe I could help them find better options." I nodded. We stood in silence for a moment. "I'm sorry," Sophie said suddenly. "I know that doesn't mean anything, doesn't change anything, but I am sorry. What I did was wrong. I told myself I was just doing a job, just following orders, but that's not an excuse. I hurt you, I helped hurt Marcus, and I have to live with that." "Why did you do it?" I asked. "Really?" She was quiet for a long time. "Money at first. Derek recruited me, said it would be easy, that no one would get hurt. I was working retail, barely making rent, and he offered me more in a month than I made in a year. I told myself I'd do it for a little while, save up, then stop. But it never works that way, does it? Once you start, you're in. They have leverage. And honestly, part of me enjoyed it. The deception, the performance. It made me feel clever, powerful. I didn't let myself think about the real people I was hurting. And now I think about it constantly. About Marcus, who really did love me, or at least loved who he thought I was. About you, who was actually a decent boss and didn't deserve what we did. About myself and who I became." She looked at me directly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even think I deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand what I did and I'm trying to be better." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, of performance, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine remorse. "The coffee shop where you work," I said. "Which one?" She told me, looking confused. "I have a friend who runs a nonprofit," I said. "They help people rebuild their lives after incarceration. They're always looking for people who understand the system, who can relate to their clients. It doesn't pay much, but it's meaningful work. Would you be interested?" Sophie stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "Why would you help me?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Maybe because I'm trying to be better too. Or maybe because you're right that people make bad choices for desperate reasons, and they deserve a chance to make better ones. I'll give you the contact information. What you do with it is up to you." I pulled out my phone, sent her the details. "Tell them I referred you. It won't guarantee anything, but it might get you an interview." "I don't understand," Sophie said. "After everything I did, why are you being kind to me?" "I spent months planning revenge," I said. "Months executing it, watching my enemies fall, feeling victorious. And you know what? It didn't make me happy. It didn't heal anything. So maybe this will, or maybe it won't. But anger is exhausting, and I'm tired of being angry." I called Apollo, who reluctantly left Sophie's side. As I walked away, she called after me. "Mr. Thornton, thank you, really, thank you." I raised a hand in acknowledgement, but didn't turn back. I didn't want her to see that I was crying, though I couldn't have explained exactly why. The months continued to pass. My company continued to grow. Sentinel was adopted by dozens of major institutions. We expanded internationally, hired hundreds of new employees, opened offices in 5 countries. I was featured in more magazines, invited to more conferences, offered positions on various boards. But the thing I was most proud of had nothing to do with business. With Dr. Chen's help, I started a foundation, the Marcus Chen Foundation, named after Marcus's mother. It provided financial assistance to families dealing with catastrophic medical expenses, specifically cancer treatment. I funded it with $50 million initially and committed to adding more each year. When I told Marcus about it, I sent him a letter, not ready for face-to-face contact, but wanting him to know. He called me, crying so hard he could barely speak. "Why?" he kept asking. "Why would you do this?" "Because your mother deserved better," I said. "Because families shouldn't have to choose between financial ruin and losing someone they love. And because I'm trying to create the world I wish had existed, the world where you could have asked for help without fear." "I'm so sorry," Marcus said. "I'll spend the rest of my life being sorry." "Then spend it being useful instead," I replied. "The foundation needs someone who understands what families are going through, someone who's been there. If you're interested, send in an application like anyone else. No guarantees, but I'll make sure it's considered fairly." Marcus did apply. The board, which didn't include me to avoid conflicts of interest, interviewed him and 2 other candidates. They hired someone else, someone with more nonprofit experience, but they offered Marcus a position on their family support team, working directly with people navigating the medical system and financial aid process. He accepted. I didn't see him often. The foundation was run independently, but I heard he was good at his job, that he brought empathy and understanding to families in crisis, that he was, in his own way, trying to make amends. As for Vance, his story ended sadly. The stress of the lawsuits, the bankruptcy, the public humiliation took its toll. He had a major heart attack about a year after everything came out. He survived, but it changed him. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd become a recluse, living off what little money he had left, bitter and broken. Part of me felt I should feel satisfied by this. He tried to destroy me and instead destroyed himself. Poetic justice. But when I heard about his heart attack, I mostly just felt sad. Sad for the friendship we'd once had, decades ago before ambition and pride corrupted it. Sad for the waste of talent and potential. Sad for the reality that revenge, even justified revenge, rarely brings the satisfaction we imagine. I thought about reaching out to him, maybe offering some kind of olive branch, but Dr. Chen advised against it. "Some wounds are too deep," she said. "Some relationships are too broken. You can forgive without reconciling. You can move on without fixing everything." She was right, so I let Vance fade into my past, a cautionary tale about the corrosive nature of grudges and the price of betrayal. 2 years after everything exploded, I attended a tech conference in Barcelona. After my keynote speech about data security and corporate ethics, ironic, given my history, but I tried to speak honestly about trust and betrayal, a young woman approached me. "Mr. Thornton, I'm Anna Reeves. I work at the nonprofit where Sophie volunteers." "How is she doing?" I asked. "Really well, actually. She's been with us for 18 months now, and she's incredible. She has this way of connecting with our clients, of understanding their situations without judgment. She's helped dozens of people get back on their feet. I'm glad to hear it. She talks about you sometimes, Anna continued, about the second chance you gave her. She says it changed her life, made her believe redemption was possible. She did the work herself, I said. I just opened a door. Well, she wanted me to tell you something if I ever met you. She said to say thank you, and that she's paying it forward. Every person she helps, she tells herself she's doing it in honor of the chance you gave her. I felt that tightness in my throat again, that unexpected emotion that seemed to come more easily these days. Tell her I said she's welcome, and that I'm proud of her. After Anna left, I stood on the conference center balcony, looking out at Barcelona's beautiful architecture, the Mediterranean in the distance. I thought about the past 2 years, about everything that had happened, everything I'd lost and gained. I'd been betrayed, yes, deeply personally betrayed by people I'd trusted. I'd gotten my revenge, crushed my enemies, proven myself right. But the real victory I was learning wasn't in the revenge. It was in what came after, in choosing to remain open despite the hurt, in helping Sophie and Marcus find redemption, in building the foundation, in slowly, carefully learning to trust again. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There was a woman I'd met a few months ago, Elena, an architect I'd run into at the gym. We'd talked a few times, grabbed coffee once. She'd asked if I wanted to have dinner sometime, and I'd made an excuse, too scared to open myself up to potential hurt again. But standing there in Barcelona, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, I decided fear was no way to live. I sent Elena a message. I know I've been distant. If the offer for dinner is still open, I'd like to take you up on it. There are some things I should probably explain about my trust issues, but I'm working on them. She responded within minutes. The offer stands, and we all have our issues. That's what makes us interesting. I smiled, pocketed my phone, and went back inside. The conference continued for 2 more days. I networked, I spoke on panels, I discussed technology and security and the future of the industry. But my mind kept drifting back to Seattle, to Apollo waiting at home, to the dinner with Elena I'd scheduled for when I returned, to the foundation board meeting where I'd hear updates about families we'd helped. On the flight home, I drafted an email to Dr. Chen. I think I'm finally ready to reduce our sessions from weekly to bi-weekly, I wrote. Not because I don't value them, but because I think I'm learning to handle things on my own. I'm not healed completely, not sure if that's even possible, but I'm better, functionally better at least. Her response was waiting when I landed. That's wonderful progress. And remember, healing isn't about erasing the past or the pain. It's about integrating it, learning from it, and choosing to move forward anyway. I'm proud of you. I drove myself home from the airport, something I still did. I'd thought about hiring a new driver, but the idea made me uncomfortable. Maybe someday, but not yet. Some wounds took longer to heal than others. Apollo went crazy when I walked in, spinning in circles and bringing me every toy he owned. I sat on the floor and let him climb all over me, his simple joy a reminder that some relationships really were uncomplicated, really were pure. That night I couldn't sleep. I went to my office and pulled up the files from 2 years ago. The photos, the recordings, the evidence I'd gathered. I'd kept it all, partly for legal reasons, partly as a reminder. I sat there for an hour, going through it, remembering the anger, the pain, the betrayal. Then I archived it all, backed it up one final time, then removed it from my active files. Not deleted, some things need to be preserved, but put away. Part of history, not part of present. The dinner with Elena went better than I expected. I was honest with her, told her the whole story. About Marcus and Sophie and Vance, about the betrayal and revenge, about my struggle to trust again. I half expected her to make an excuse and leave, but she listened quietly, asked thoughtful questions, and at the end said, "Thank you for telling me. That couldn't have been easy to share." "I'm not looking for pity," I said quickly. "And I'm not offering it," she replied, "but I appreciate the honesty. We all have history baggage, at least you're upfront about yours." We started seeing each other regularly. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just dinners, walks with Apollo, conversations that sometimes stayed light and sometimes went deep. She told me about her divorce, about her own struggles with trust. We were both damaged in our ways, both cautious, both learning. 3 months into our relationship, she met Sophie by accident. We'd gone to a coffee shop where Sophie was working. I'd made a point of going there occasionally, not to check on her, but just to normalize our interaction. And Sophie's face when she saw me with someone went through several emotions before settling on something like happy surprise. "Is this your girlfriend?" Sophie asked, and I could see her genuine pleasure at the idea. This is Alina, I said, not quite answering the question. They chatted briefly, and afterward Alina said, "That's her, the one who betrayed you." Yes, she seems nice now. People can change sometimes. Do you trust her? I thought about it. I trust that she's trying to be better. I don't trust her the way I did before. I'll never be that naive again. But I trust her intentions now, if that makes sense. Alina nodded. It does. I think that's healthy, actually. Trust but verify, hope but protect yourself. It became our relationship philosophy. We grew closer, but we both maintained boundaries, both stayed aware of our vulnerabilities. It wasn't the wild, reckless love of youth. It was something more measured, more mature, and in its way more real. A year into our relationship, Alina moved in. It was a big step for me, letting someone into my space that fully, but it felt right. Apollo loved her, which I took as a good sign, and she understood when I needed time alone, when the weight of the past got heavy and I needed to process. Around the same time, the Marcus Chen Foundation hit a milestone. We'd helped our 1,000th family. The board organized a small celebration, and they invited me to speak. Marcus was there, working the event, helping families, and we ended up face to face for the first time in years. "Congratulations," I said, gesturing at the celebration. 1,000 families helped. Your mother would be proud. Our mother would be proud, Marcus corrected gently. This is as much you as me, more really. We stood awkwardly, years of history between us. Then Marcus extended his hand. I know we can't go back. I know I destroyed what we had. But I want you to know that I've spent every day of the past 3 years trying to be worthy of this second chance. Not just with the foundation, but in every part of my life. I'm in therapy. I'm honest with people, sometimes brutally so. I'm trying to be the person you thought I was. I shook his hand. I'm glad, for you and for the people you're helping. Will we ever be friends again? He asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know, I finally said. Maybe some things break too completely to be fully repaired, but we can be friendly. We can work together toward good things. Maybe that's enough. Marcus nodded, accepting this. Maybe it is. We didn't become close again, but we built something new, something based not on the false friendship of before, but on honest recognition of past failure and present effort. He worked for the foundation. I funded it and provided oversight. We were cordial at events, professional in our interactions, and gradually something like respect developed. Sophie's trajectory continued upward. She went back to school, got a degree in social work, and was hired full-time by the nonprofit. She started a program specifically for people who'd committed white-collar crimes and were trying to rebuild their lives. She understood them in ways others couldn't, and her program had remarkable success rates. We'd run into each other occasionally. The conversations were never long, never deep, but they were genuine. She'd tell me about her work. I'd tell her about the company or the foundation. We'd acknowledge the past without dwelling on it, two people who'd harmed each other and been harmed, trying to do better. As for Vance, he eventually reached out. 3 years after his heart attack, he sent a letter to my office. It was brief. I've spent years being angry at you, blaming you for everything that went wrong in my life. But the truth is I did this to myself. My choices, my actions, my consequences. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I finally understand what you tried to tell me 15 years ago. Shortcuts and stolen success aren't worth the cost. I'm sorry for what I did, for what I tried to do. I hope you're well, Richard. I read the letter several times. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him stew in his regret. But I remembered what Dr. Chen had said about forgiveness being for yourself, not for the other person. I wrote back, Richard, I appreciate your letter and your honesty. What you did caused real harm, and I won't pretend otherwise. But I accept your apology, and I hope you find peace. We were friends once, before everything went wrong. I choose to remember that person and hope he's finding his way back. Take care of yourself. Best, James. I didn't hear from him again, but I heard through others that he'd started volunteering, teaching basic business skills to ex-cons trying to start legitimate businesses. His way of making amends, I supposed. Everyone finds their own path to redemption. 5 years after the betrayal, almost to the day, I stood in front of a mirror in a hotel room, adjusting my tie. Alina came up behind me, beautiful in her wedding dress, and wrapped her arms around my waist. Ready? She asked. Terrified, I admitted, which I'm told is normal. It is, she said. I'm terrified too, but I'm also sure. Are you sure? I turned to face her. I'm sure. It took me a long time to trust again, to open up, to take this risk, but yes, I'm sure. The wedding was small, close friends, family, key employees. Dr. Chen was there. She'd become more than my therapist, a genuine friend. Anna from Sophie's nonprofit came, bringing a card from Sophie that read simply, "Wishing you all the happiness. You deserve it." Marcus wasn't invited. That bridge, while no longer burned, hadn't been fully rebuilt. Maybe someday, but not yet. Some boundaries needed to remain. During my vows, I spoke honestly about my journey, about learning that trust wasn't weakness, that vulnerability wasn't failure, that opening yourself to potential hurt was also opening yourself to potential joy. "You helped me remember how to hope," I told Alina, her hands in mine. After betrayal, after revenge, after everything, I'd forgotten how to hope for simple, good things, a partner to share my life, a love built on honesty, a future that's about more than just success or victory. You gave that back to me, and I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. The reception was joyful. Apollo, dressed in a bow tie, was the ring bearer and the star of the evening. People danced, laughed, celebrated. For one night, the past was truly past, and only the future mattered. Late in the evening, I stepped outside for air. Dr. Chen found me there. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Good," I said, "really good. Is it strange that I keep waiting for something to go wrong?" "Not strange at all," she said. "Betrayal trauma teaches us to be hypervigilant, to expect danger, but you're aware of it, which means you can work with it." "I never thanked you properly," I said, "for helping me through all this, for teaching me how to be angry without being consumed by it, how to forgive without being naive, how to trust again without being stupid." "You did the work," she said. "I just provided tools and perspective." "Still, thank you." She smiled. "You're welcome. Now get back in there to your wife. Yes, I know you're not officially married until tomorrow, but close enough." I went back inside, back to Alina, back to dancing and laughter and celebration. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt completely, genuinely, unreservedly happy. The years continued, the company grew, the foundation expanded. Alina and I bought a bigger house, adopted another dog, traveled the world. We had arguments sometimes, moments of doubt, the normal struggles of any relationship, but we worked through them with honesty and therapy and commitment. I never fully trusted the way I had before Marcus's betrayal. That innocence was gone forever, but I learned a different kind of trust, one that was eyes open, boundaried, but still real. I learned that you could protect yourself and still love deeply, that wisdom and vulnerability weren't mutually exclusive. 10 years after the betrayal, I received an invitation to speak at a conference about corporate espionage and business ethics. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I accepted and I told the story. All of it. The betrayal, the revenge, the aftermath. I talked about the cost of revenge, even justified revenge, about the importance of building systems where people could ask for help before they got desperate, about forgiveness as a practice, not a single act. After the talk, a young man approached me. He was nervous, fidgeting. "Mr. Thornton, I'm Jason. I work for a competitor of yours. Not Quantum, they're long gone, but in the same space. And I'm being pressured to steal information from my current employer. Someone offered me money, a lot of money, and I'm tempted because I have student loans and my partner is sick and I don't know what to do." I looked at this young man, saw Marcus in his face, saw myself at various points in my life. "First," I said, "you're already doing the right thing by talking about it instead of just doing it. That takes courage." "I haven't decided yet," he admitted. "I know, but you're here talking to me, which means part of you knows it's wrong. Let me ask you this. What do you need? Really need, not just want." "I need about $30,000 to cover my partner's medical bills and make a dent in my loans. That's what they're offering me for one piece of information." I thought about Marcus's mother, about the Marcus Chen Foundation, about second chances. "Here's what I'm going to do," I said. "I'm going to give you the contact information for a foundation that helps with medical bills. No guarantees, but apply. I'm also going to connect you with a financial advisor who works with people dealing with student loan debt. There are options, legal options, that can help." "Why would you help me?" he asked, echoing Sophie's question from years ago. "Because someone should have helped the person who betrayed me before he got desperate enough to do it. Because I'd rather prevent the crime than punish it. Because I've learned that revenge doesn't heal anything, but prevention might." Jason took my contact information, thanked me profusely. I don't know if he used it, if he resisted the temptation, if he made the right choice. But I'd given him an option, a path that didn't lead to betrayal and regret. That was all I could do. That night, I told Alina about the encounter. "Do you think he'll take the money and betray his employer anyway?" she asked. "Maybe," I admitted. "People make bad choices even when they have good options. but at least he'll make that choice knowing he had an alternative, and that makes all the difference. Now, 15 years after Marcus first betrayed me, I sit in my office, writing this all down, not for publication, just for myself, an accounting of what happened, what I learned, who I became. The company is stronger than ever. We've weathered scandals in our industry, economic downturns, technological shifts. The foundation has helped over 10,000 families. Marcus still works there, now in a senior position. We're not friends, not really, but we're something. Allies, maybe, people with shared history and shared purpose. Sophie is a director at her nonprofit now, published researcher on rehabilitation and redemption. She's married, has a kid, built a life. We exchange Christmas cards. Vance died 5 years ago, heart attack, alone in his apartment. I went to his funeral. There weren't many people there. I said a few words about the friend he'd been before ambition corrupted him. It felt important to remember that person, to acknowledge that he'd been more than his worst choices. Elena and I are still together, still happy, still working on our respective issues while supporting each other. We never had kids, neither of us wanted them, but we have our dogs, our work, our causes. It's a full life, a good life. And sometimes on quiet mornings, I think about that day in the conference room 15 years ago, the day I revealed everything, destroyed my enemies, got my revenge. I remember the satisfaction, the triumph, and I remember how empty it felt. If I could go back, would I do things differently? I don't know. The revenge was justified. They did try to destroy me, to steal from me, but maybe I would have left more room for mercy, for second chances offered sooner rather than later. Maybe I would have approached Marcus when I first suspected something, given him a chance to come clean. Maybe I would have been less focused on the perfect revenge and more focused on the messy work of healing. But I can't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward, carrying our scars, hopefully learning from them, trying to do better. The betrayal broke something in me, that's true. But in the breaking, in the painful process of putting myself back together, I learned things I might never have learned otherwise. About trust, about forgiveness, about the difference between justice and revenge, about the cost of both. I learned that people are complicated, that they make terrible choices for understandable reasons, and that everyone deserves a chance at redemption, even if they don't always take it. I learned that success measured only in money or victory is hollow, but success measured in lives helped, in second chances offered, in choosing compassion over cruelty, that success lasts. Most importantly, I learned that the opposite of betrayal isn't revenge. It's not even justice. It's choosing to remain open, to keep trusting carefully, to keep loving despite the risk. That's the real victory, the real revenge against those who tried to make me hard and closed and bitter. They failed, I'm happy, and that, more than any courtroom victory or business success, is my triumph. So I sit here 15 years later and I write this story, not as a warning, though there are lessons here, not as a guide, though there might be wisdom in it, just as a record. This happened, I was betrayed, I got revenge, and then I spent years learning that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, pales in comparison to redemption, reconciliation, and the hard, daily work of choosing hope over bitterness. Would I recommend my path to others? I don't know, everyone's journey is different. But if you're reading this, if you've been betrayed, if you're considering revenge, let me tell you this, get your revenge if you must. Sometimes it's justified, sometimes it's necessary, but don't stop there. Don't let it be the end of your story, because revenge might give you satisfaction, but it won't give you peace. Only forgiveness in time can do that, and only choosing to trust again, carefully and wisely, can truly heal you. That's what I've learned, that's my story. And every morning when I wake up next to Elena, when Apollo jumps on the bed demanding breakfast, when I read reports from the foundation about another family helped, another life changed, I'm grateful for all of it. The betrayal, the revenge, the aftermath, and everything that came after. Because all of it, the good and the terrible, made me who I am, and for the first time in a long time, I actually like who I am. That's enough, that's more than enough, that's everything.